What does antibiotic resistance mean? Like, why is it that we're giving animals this compound, I guess, and what dangers are we facing because of it, or if any at all?
Yeah, we're facing huge dangers. We're on the edge of an abyss in the microbiological world, where we just have no idea where we're headed for, I believe. And it's one of the, so if you look at the United Nations top 10 threats to humanity, I did a post on this a little while ago. 7 out of the top 10, so 6 are directly caused by animal agriculture, and most likely.
Do you know what they are?
So greenhouse gas emissions. So
Yeah.
greenhouse gas emissions aren't animal agriculture doesn't produce the most emissions, but you've also got to consider opportunity costs of the deforestation that we're talking about. Also got to consider what effect we're having on climate. So it's climate change is the big one. Sorry, what I should say. So climate change is the umbrella term. Greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, ocean dead zones. So that's really important, and waste production. So toxic waste production. Antibiotic resistance is another one. And then there's pandemics. So the flu pandemic, and they've also got a separate one for other pandemics, I believe. I can't remember what's the one. One of them was, this one was a little bit, I thought was a little bit far-fetched. It was a bit hard to claim, but it was HIV, but that came from eating chimpanzees, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
that's where we think. So it's another form of animal agriculture.
Well, they kind of say that was because the animal agriculture or the sea agriculture of them fishing, made them go inland.
Yeah,
with
they
these
had to go and get
bushmeats
other food.
stuff.
And so we know we're doing the exact same thing on a different scale. It's not HIV. It's all sorts of pandemics. The flu virus is going to be the biggest killer. It's insane. It's mutating faster. It's mutating rapidly. And this is what we're seeing with the current pandemic right now. They're smart. They've been here longer than us, these microbes. They know what they're doing. They're evolving. They'll find ways to live just like we want to live. And one of the last ones was impoverished countries, so impoverished areas where, so places stricken by drought and famine. And so, number one, consumption of water, and we could feed the world, right, with the grain we feed to cattle. I'm not saying go and make all these GMO crops, but the land for these GMO crops, we could make some good fruit and veggie crops, right?
Yeah.
So, that's why I personally believe that animal agriculture and particularly factory farming is the biggest threat to humanity, and I've got a good reason to believe that. I work in intensive care, and we give antibiotics all the time. We have infectious disease teams who circulate the hospital, microbiologists who will call me and say, "Hey, I've got this result. I've tested this. This is this bacteria that's growing in this person's blood. We think it's resistant to this. We think it's sensitive to that. You should start this antibiotic." We have people who regulate antibiotics. They come and they do rounds through ICU, and they're incredibly smart people. And I've got ultimate respect for these guys. They know their stuff so well, and we essentially regulate antibiotics when 70%. I think it used to be about 80%. Now it's decreased a little bit. Europe has significantly decreased the amount of antibiotics, but the rest of the world, Australia and America, haven't. So much of our antibiotics, and don't worry about the percentage. Even the mass of antibiotics is increasing, so it's just continues to go up.
When you're saying mass, do you mean like different strands?
Kilograms of antibiotics we're feeding these cattle are just going up and up every year.
Right.
And
is that because the cattle?
Because we've got more and more cattle,
Right.
So it is starting to, in some areas like the EU, it's starting to decrease. So that's why the percentage is coming down. But still, we're still increasing we're still promoting antibiotic resistance. And like anything, bacteria just wants to live. So it will evolve. And just like when all humans are born, we'll come up with different genetic variations that some are favourable, some aren't. There's a really good documentary. It's a small video. I used to have it on my page, and I'll try and get it up there. I think it's still there under antibiotics, but I'm pretty sure it is still there. But it's at Harvard Medical School, and it shows the spread of bacteria as you increase. So they have an agar dishes, and they're all lined out. And they start with 2 like bacteria, and it just replicates. And you see the bacteria replicate, and it gets to the next agar dish, which is 10 times the antibiotic concentration as the previous one. Then it's 100 times the next one, and then it's 1,000 times the next one. And you just see it just mutates, and all of a sudden you get a mutant bacteria, and that'll be resistant to that antibiotic. I see it in intensive care all the time. We're treating people with antibiotics, and all of a sudden it just becomes so resistant that bacteria just it becomes a commensal organism. It stays on that human forever, and they'll sit in their respiratory tract or the urinary tract and things like that, on their skin, MRSA. So methicillin resistant Staph aureus. So all these bacteria that are just constantly exposed to these antibiotics are just mutating, and we haven't produced many new bacteria of new antibiotics for a very long time. And it's one of the biggest threats that we'll ever face. There are people in this world, there's a really good documentary called Resistance online. There are people who have lost limbs and things because bacteria is so rampant that none of our antibiotics treat them. We are using some of our last line antibiotics at the moment in ICU. Meropenem is a really strong, powerful antibiotic, and we spare it for very serious cases, and it's just getting used increasingly more. I'm not an expert in antibiotics, and the microbe world is incredibly complex. But I do know that we are literally just playing with fire, and that's obvious. We are absolutely playing with fire. And I even know some of the infectious disease guys who said to me that the number one cause of antibiotic resistance is animal agriculture, and we know that. So yeah, we're facing some pretty bad things in the future, I believe.